Let
Good,
us,
good morning.
good morning, Robert. Let's get started today. Today's daf. For those they're full of menachot. We're not done, I promise you, but we are on a little bit of a side tangent. Yesterday, we went into a pretty extensive discussion about where you can walk into the Beit HaMikdash, where you can't walk in, the different levels, the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Aron, the Parochet, the Kaporet, and of course, many other mitzvot, including the lulav. And today, in continuing the conversation about things that the Torah gives you a specific number, and the number is ma'akev, we get on a side tangent, which is a fun side tangent, though not an easy one. Sorry, about other things, and we're going to today talk about the menorah. But good morning. But as you know, as people probably know, Menachot also then talks about safrut, about writing. So we're going to see a little bit later in the week about that. But today's daf, we're up to daf Chaf Chet Amud Aleph, daf 28, starts from the Mishnah around 10 lines down. Shiv'a kinei menorah, the seven branches of the menorah, ma'akvin zedza. I'm going to pause for 1 second. Hope everyone doesn't mind. In 2 weeks, we're going to have the Parsha Truma, right? And in Truma, I'm going to read the psukim very quickly because everyone knows these psukim, but of course they're confusing. The pasuk says, "Asita minorat zahav tahar." Make the menorah out of gold. Miksha te'aseh menorah. Miksha literally means you beat it out, meaning you take one big chunk of metal of gold and beat out the shape of the menorah. Yirecha vikana, which means the base and the stems. Givia, kaftara, uparacha, imenu yiyu. The Giviim, the Kaftarim, and the Prachim. And we usually translate, we're going to have in today's Gemara. The source of this, the Giviim are cups. We translate them, Kaftarim, as balls, or I don't know, there's a French word Rashi uses for this, apples or something like that. Pracha are flowers. These are all part of the menorah. And then the psukim, which I'm not going to read all of them, go into how many? Shisha kanim, 6 branches, right? 3 on each side, and 3 gviim, shukadim b'kanei echad, and kaftar v'ferech. And we go through this complicated design, which is what today's Gemara is going to go through. So it says our Mishnah, back to our Mishnah, Shiva kinei menorah, the 7 branches, the 7 stems of the menorah, makvin zedzeh. You need to have all 7. If you have a 6-stemmed menorah, it's not kosher to light in the Beit HaMikdash. Shiva neroteha. Now the stems did not have oil or wicks in them. The stems were like, I don't know how you call them, like they were just like pipes. And on the top you had a cup. That was the candle. The 7 candles, or not candles, 7 cups of lighting, let's say, 7 nerot, makvin zeta, you need to have all 7. Shtei parshiot shebemezuzah. Now, on a side point, again, we'll get back to the menorah in a minute. In the mezuzah, everyone knows there's 2 parshiot in the mezuzah, Shema and Vahayam Shemoah, and they are makvot zedza. You can't have a mezuzah of one without the other. And the truth is, I feel like tavechad makvan, even one letter in the mezuzah is makev. If you're missing even one letter, it's puzzle. Arba parshiot shebetfilin, the 4 sections of the tefillin. Remember, there are 4 portions of the tefillin. They are makvin zedza. You have to have each one, and if you have only 3 or 2 or whatever, it's not kosher tefillin. And again, I feel like tavechad makvan, even one letter is makev. Arba tzitziot makvot zuetzu. The 4 tzitzit on the our dalid knafayim. We have a garment of 4 corners. You have to put tzitzit on each corner. If one is missing, there's no point in wearing the other 3, right? And they are makev zetzah. Sharbatan mitzvah 4 is one mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah of 4 tzitzit on one baguette. It's one mitzvah of tzitzit. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Arbatam, Arba mitzvot. Rabbi Shmuel disagrees, and again, we'll see in the Gemara. And he says, in fact, there are 4 separate mitzvot, and maybe you should do one without the other. Now, says the Gemara, my time, what's the reason that all these things are ma'akev, at least by the menorah, which is the first topic of our Mishnah? Because like we saw yesterday and the day before, maybe, havaya k'tivbo. It says by menorah, havaya. Rashi says the pasuk is kaftarem uknotam imenu yihiyu. And yiyu is always a language of it should be that way and exactly that way. Don't deviate. Tanur Rabbanan. Now says the Braita, this is Tosefta in Masechet Chulin, Menorah hayta ba min ha'eshet u'min ha'zahav. There's 2 very important principles about the menorah. One is that it comes from eshet. I don't know how to translate eshet, but the meaning is one big piece of again, I don't know what the word means exactly, but Rashi is one chaticha of metal that, as opposed to pieces, which we'll see in
It
the
says block here.
block. Oh, it's a beautiful word. Okay, one big block. Thank you, and it has to come from gold. right? As opposed to asa min hagutaot, if you make it from piecemeal, piecework, right? Which is basically you go to the pile and you find all the last pieces of gold from or whatever metal from other things and you put them together, you weld them together, or you somehow put them together. That's psula. That's possible. You can't make a menorah from parts. But where am I? That's if you're talking about gold, okay? But mishar minei matachot kshira. But if you make it from other metals, let's say your menorah is made out of silver or copper, then you can actually make it out of pieces. So when the Torah says you have to use one big block to make the menorah, that's only if you make it out of gold, because the Torah said make the menorah, right? Zahav tahar, asita menorah zahav tahar miksha. You have to make it beat out, meaning you have to take one piece and beat it out, but that's only if you make it out of gold. If you make it out of other metals, it can be even pieces. Okay? Says the Gemara once why are you saying the Torah has two descriptions for a menorah? It has to be gold and it has to be one big piece. And you're saying, well, it only has to be one big piece if it's made out of gold, but you can make it out of other metals. But Maishna says the Gemara min haguta ot psula. Why do you say that it's made out of other pieces? It's pasol dichtiv because the pasuk says miksha, right? And it says the word havaya. So it says you have to beat it out, meaning I don't like that term, but miksha means you carve it out, not carve it, but you would miksha literally does not mean carve because it means with a metal, you don't carve, right? You shape it. So it says by that you make sure you have to sort of make it out of one big piece and the word havaya, but it also says the word gold, right? So why do you say it's kosher? Shamine matachot nami. Other metal should not be kosher for menorah because zahav havaya markra. Zahav havaya, right? It says the word zahav. It says yihiya or yihiya. And so why don't you say gold is essential? And it's impossible to make a menorah outside of any other metal. And we're going to see in a minute, like I said before, everybody agrees. There's going to be a big debate about what materials you can use for a menorah. But everybody agrees that other metals, silver and bronze, are okay. So why is that? Says the Gemara, because Amar Kra Te'aseh. There's an extra word te'aseh that you make the menorah, implying you can make it out of more things. The rabot shar minei matachot. You can make it out of other kinds of metal. Says the Gemara, but how do you know that's referring to the metal? Remember, the Torah has two requirements: zahav and miksheh. It has to be made out of a block, and it has to be made out of gold. And you're saying the extra word te'aseh is expansive, not only gold but even other metals. Maybe ema the rabot grutaot. Maybe the point of te'aseh is you can even make it out of pieces. That ideally it should be one big block, but it doesn't have to be. It says we're impossible. Lo sakadaitach. It's impossible to say that you can make it out of pieces of gold. Right? The word havaya is referring to the beating it out of one big piece. That's what's essential. Says, what do you mean? Teaseh nami amikshektiv, right? The teaseh is written on mikshe as well, right? So when it says te'aseh, which means make it in more expansive ways, which we included not only gold, but even other metals, that word te'aseh is referring to mikshe also. Answers the Gemara, well, it repeats the word mikshe. Mikshe la'akev. It says the word mikshe by the menorah twice, and that's to tell you that you absolutely must make it out of one solid piece if you're making it out of gold, not pieces. This is where, but zahav nami la'akev, right? It also repeats the word zahav twice by menorah. So again, you haven't yet convinced me why one requirement of the Torah, which is zahav, is dispensable. You can make it gold or other metals. And the other requirement of the Torah of miksheh is indispensable. You can only beat it out of one piece. Answers the Gemara, well, it's because you really didn't, we're sort of hiding from you the whole context here. Because, Haimai, where am I? Is that where I am? Yeah.
Yeah.
Haimai, think of it this way. If you say that the right way to learn this is that the Torah is saying, if you make it out of pieces, it's possible, but mishar minei matachot kshera, then I can understand why the Torah repeats. Hainu, zahav, mikshe l'drasha. Then I understand why it says zahav twice and mikshe, and I understand what to do with it. Now, we don't know what that means. And again, we're going to explain it in 1 minute. However, Ela'i Amr, if you said the opposite, that min hagurtaot kshera, that the Torah is saying make it out of one piece of gold, but you don't really need to make it out of one piece, right? That's ideal, but not required. But the gold is required, right? So that one piece grutaot would be kosher. This is the other alternative version, right? That you can make it out of pieces. But mishamin deit matachot psula, but other kinds of metal would be puzzle. Then I don't think there's any way to darshan zahav, mikshem, my darshan. What? There's no way to use these psukim, double psukim of zahav zahav and mikshen mikshen. Now says the Gemara, obviously you're not telling us what you're talking about, right? What is this drasha that you keep referring to that only makes sense if you go one way and if you don't go the other way? So it says the Gemara now around 12 lines from the bottom. My drasha, what are you talking about, right? What's the context of this discussion? Titania. Okay, this is the Braita that we sort of expected people to understand, and we are now going to explain. Says the Braita, if you look at the and we are, I guess, around 12 lines or so from the bottom, maybe more. Kikar zahav tahar ya'aseoto et kol hakelim ha'ela. Right? It says this isn't not just by the menorah. It says well, this is by the menorah, but it's referring to all the parts of the menorah, right? The cups and things, all of that. Make from a kikar zahav, from one big block. Kikar is a huge amount. I don't know how much, but Charlie probably knows, 10 kilograms or something of gold. You make
27 to 34. I just looked it up.
2734 kilograms?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So huge, right? 60.
Not for for a uh, uh, for a menorah that large.
Right. No, I'm saying it's a huge amount. So you have to have this huge kikar of zahav, yaseoto, et kol hakelim ha'ela, all of these things, meaning all the branches and the cups and the candles, all the parts. Says the Braita, you know what this pasuk is telling you? Ba'a zahav, ba'a kikar. If you're making it out of gold, you got to use this huge block, as Charlie just said, 50, whatever, 30 kilogram block of gold. But if you're making it eno ba zahav, eno ba kikar. If you don't make it out of gold, and again, clearly this Bright is assuming, we'll see why in a second, that you can make it out of other metals. If you make it out of silver, remember, silver is much lighter than gold, right? And obviously the copper, I don't know how heavy copper is, but tin is lighter for sure, right? So you don't need a kikar, you don't need 30 kilograms if you're making out of a lighter metal. And so you don't need to have a kikar. The Torah also says, Giviyeh kaftareh pracha, that you have to make these three different accoutrements, right? The giviyim are cups, the kaftarim are balls, whatever that means, round designs, and the flowers. They come from it. Says the Braita, that's only required if it's made out of gold. Ba'a zahav, ba'a gviyim kaftarim u'prachim. If the menorah is made out of gold, you have to have these little designs. Eno ba'a zahav, eno ba'a gviyim kaftarim u'prachim. If you don't make it out of gold, you can make a simple menorah. It has to have seven, of course, but you don't have to add all these other things. The Ema Nami says the Gemara, well, maybe you should take this even, this is the Braita, sorry. Maybe you should take this even further. Ba'zahav ba'akanim. Maybe when it says you have to have seven branches on the menorah, it's only if you have gold. If you don't have gold, if it's silver, just make one branch, right? Maybe you just need one candlestick. Eino ba'zahav, eino ba'akanim. It says more, well, that's not a menorah. Who pamut mikri? That's called a pamut. Right? Again, I don't know what pamut means in English, but like a candlestick. That's not the same thing. No one in their right mind would confuse a candelabra with a candlestick, right? For sure not. Certainly not in Disney. So that for sure is not possible. So that's the first part of the Braita. Continues the Braita. Then the pasuk says, remember, there's another, the main description of the menorah, of course, is in Parshat Truma. But later on, in Bahalotcha, in Sefer Bamidbar, we repeat the mitzvah of the menorah when we talk actually about lighting it. And there it's a much more short description, but the pasuk in Bahalotcha says, V'zeh ma'aseh menorah, this is how you make the menorah, mikshe zahav. You have to beat it out of a big piece of gold. Says the Braita, what that tells you is, ba zahav ba mikshe. If it's coming out of gold, it comes out of a big piece. Eino ba zahav, eino ba mikshe, right? Says the Gemara, so that seems repetitive, right? Because it said Zahav in Truma and Bahalotcha. It said Mikshe in Truma and Bahalotcha. Ask the Braita, Mikshe to say for the Ma'ata. Why do you have a second time to say that you have to beat it out? You already told me in Truma that you have to beat out the menorah. That is La'mu'ute Chatzotrot. That is to tell you that you only have to beat out the menorah, not the Chatzotrot. Remember, the Chatzotrot were, we translate trumpets. I don't think that's really what they were, like horns, right? That were made to blow in the Beit HaMikdash. They were very important, right? Asita Chatzotrot. We'll see the psukim in a second. The Tanya, as the Braita said, and this again is a continuation of the same discussion, 5 lines from the bottom. Chatzotrot hayubah min ha'eshet. Chatzotrot would come from eshet. Does someone come to help me translate what eshet means? Some kind of, right. Right. Oh, Miriam said, sorry, you're right. Thank you. They had to come the same way from a big block. Thank you, Nava. They had to come from a big piece, right? Min hakesef. Now, but you have to make them out of silver. So basically, you would take one block of silver and you would carve out or beat out the chatzotra, right? But says the Braita, asum min hagutaot, if you make them out of pieces, then it's ksherim. You're supposed to make it out of a big block, but if you find silver pieces and weld them together and make a trumpet, that's okay. But mishar minei matachot psulim. But if you make it out of other metal, remember the Torah says the chatzotrot are made out of silver. You make your chatzotrot out of tin or out of, I don't know, gold even, they are puzzle, or copper, or thank you, then they're puzzle, right? Why is it that other metals are puzzle for the chatzotrot? Dichtiv kesef v'havaya. It says the word kesef, and it has to be that way. But minagutot nami mikshev v'havaya. Right? It says by the chatzotrot that you have to beat them out. So why are pieces okay? And again, basically what we're saying is that the menorah and the chatzotrot are mirror opposites. By the menorah, it says gold and beat it out. And we're saying, well, the gold is not essential, but the miksheh is essential. By chatzotrot, it says kesef and miksheh. And we're saying the kesef is essential and the miksheh is not essential. Why do you say that? Says the Gemara, because we learned one from the other. The last line of Chavchet Amid Aleph, Miut Rachmana Gabi Menorah, it says by Menorah, Miksheh, a second time, this is the only object that has to be Miksheh. He velo Chatzotrot. So this has to be Miksheh. Chatzotrot don't have to be, they're supposed to be, but they don't have to be. And so therefore, so now this is back to the original question, right? Again, there's two things by menorah that are said. One is that it has to be miksheh, it has to be a solid piece, and one is that it's gold. We said one is essential and one is not. We weren't back and forth. How do you know which one? Now, because chatzotrot, which are silver and miksheh, we learned from miksheh of a menorah that it has to be by a menorah you need miksheh, but not by chatzotrot. And therefore, since that's the required one by menorah, the gold is what's not required by the menorah. And of course, there's no way to do it the other way because gold and silver are not going to cover each other. So that's a beautiful explanation. Says the Gemara now, last words on Chavchet Amud Aleph, Tanura Banan. We have a new Braita that says, Kol HaKelim Shasam Moshe, Ksherim, all the kelim that Moshe made for the original Mishkan, which again, coming up next week's parsha, right? Not quite this week, but the following week. All of the kelim or some of them, we'll get into next week, right? All of the kelim that Moshe made, they are kosher for him, meaning for the Mishkan, uk sherim lidorot, and they're kosher forever. So after Moshe passes on and they go into Eretz Yisrael, you can keep using the shulchan and the aron and the cups and all the things, except, obviously we're introducing a concept, except the chatzotrot, except for the trumpets or again, I don't know how you translate really chatzotrot, but the horns that Moshe made that were kesherot lo upsulot lidorot. You could not use them. They basically, like in other cultures, they would bury them with him, right? I don't know if they really buried them, but you didn't use them in the Beit HaMikdash for other, or for the Mishkan, for other generations. So, psulot lidorot, okay? Chatzotrot my taima. Now, what's the reason? How do you know that? Right? Hashem says to Moshe, make for you chatzotrot, which implies lecha v'lo lidorot, right? Which sounds right. These are personal chatzotrot for whatever reason. Elamiata, but there's a lot of other times where the Torah says the same language. For example, asay lecha aron ad eitz, right? Make an aron for you. Hachinami lecha v'lo lidorot. Right? Obviously, it's not the case. We know that the Aron of Moshe stuck around with the Jewish people and remained with them forever, or not forever, of course, but until it was lost, and then it was refound, and then it was lost, and then ultimately lost at the end of near the end of the first Beit HaMikdash. But that Aron was there for a long, long time. Ella says where you're right, because there's a whole different drasha. When Hashem says to Moshe, make an Aron for you, there's two possible explanations for that. There's one man Amar who says that lecha means that it comes from you, that Hashem was saying to Moshe, you sponsor the Aron, right? You have to pay. The Aron is the deepest connection I have to the Torah and to the Luchot. You, Moshe, have that connection. Use your own money to buy the Aron, which is not going to be cheap. Remember, the Aron had a lot of gold on top of it. So that Hashem was saying to Moshe, you have to pay for the Aron. That's one explanation of lecha. Ilaman Amar, there's another mandamar that says that God said to Moshe, I want you to make the Aron, meaning Asita lecha Aron. Kaviyachol, what Hashem was saying was Bishalcha ani rotzeh miter mishalahem. Hashem said to Moshe, I really like you more than everyone else. Don't tell them, right? But meaning, I want the Aron to be your personal thing, right? So therefore, hi nami mi lahach. right? This also says the Gemara we should need for the same source, right? Meaning you should need also to explain, excuse me, that the licha is there to tell you that either you make it for yourself or you make it for Moshe. Answers the Gemara, Shani Atam Damar Kra, licha licha Trei Zimni. It says actually by the Chatzotrot, it says licha licha 2 times, Asay licha v'hayu licha. It says make them for you and they will be for you to blow, and therefore that's why we learn that the Chatzotrot specifically were really Moshe's private Chatzotrot. And that when Moshe died, they got rid of those chatzotrot and they had to make new ones for further usage. Okay, but that's not typical, and most things are lidorot. Okay, like the Aron and the Shulchan and everything else in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, says the Gemara on the same topic, right? Where am I? Tani Rav Papa, Braid Rav Chanan, Kamed Rav Yosef. Okay, so Rav Papa, this is a very important name dropping here. Rav Papa, the son of Rav Chanan, stood in front of Rav Yosef. These were Amoraim of very important Amoraim in the probably second generation. The Rav Papa stood in front of Rav Yosef and he taught the following Braita. Remember, the Amoraim didn't make Braitot, but they would repeat Braitot that they heard. So Rav Papa heard this Braita and he said it in front of Rav Yosef. And this is a Braita now. Quote the Braita. The menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, Haida ba min ha'eshet, came from a block, as we now know, right? Min ha'zahav, and it came from gold, right? That's, of course, the simple meaning of the pasuk. Asa'ah shel kesef kshera, right? If you make it out of silver, everyone agrees that it's kosher. What if you make it out of other metals? Shel batz, shel avar, shel gisteron. I don't exactly know how to translate these things. Avar, we always translate as lead. Batz, Rashi is bedil. What does bedil mean in English, Miriam? Tin, maybe?
Bedil. I don't have bedil.
Rashi says bedil. The Gemara says
Avad. So ba'atz is tin,
tin, okay.
and then avad is lead.
Right. That's what I was
or cheap metallic alloy.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Rashi says other things, right? So cheap, like mixed metals. I don't know much about metal. No big expert. But other metals, which you can imagine a menorah out of lead would have been very heavy. But anyways, other metals, it would protect you from nuclear things, I guess, right? But other metals are a machloket. So that's the Braita. If it's made out of silver, it's kosher. If it's made out of bats, aver or avar, and gisteron just means other mixed metals, like metal alloys, right? Which I don't know what that means exactly, but I know the words. Then Rebbe says it's posel, that's not kosher for menorah. And Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. So it's a machloket tanaim about other metals. If it's made out of shel eitz, v'shel etzem, v'shel zechuchit, if it's made out of non-metal, so it's made out of wood, or it's made out of bones, right? You have a really beautiful bone from, I don't know, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you turn it into a menorah, or shel zechuchit, or it's made out of glass, which you can imagine, very beautiful menorah made out of glass. Divrei hakol psula. Everyone agrees that it's puzzle. So you can make it out of gold. Everyone agrees you can make it out of silver. There's a machloket about other metals, and everyone agrees that non-metallic things like bone and wood and glass are puzzle. So that is the Braita that Rav Papa said in front of Rav Yosef. Said Rav Yosef, I don't understand what you're talking about. Amalei my daitach. Says Rav Yosef, what's the rationale for the machloket between these Tanaim about these different metals? Amarle, so Rav Papa said back to Rav Yosef, because it's based on whether you hold klal uprat, right? Well, let's read inside. Bein mar or bein mar, klali uprati darshi, right? Remember, the Torah says asita menorah. We're going to see this psukim in a second. Make a menorah. That's a very general thing. If you stop there, you would say, I can make a menorah out of everything. Even if you look at Hanukkah, right, we make menorahs out of potatoes or beer cans, or you know what I mean? You can make it out, and you can imagine the breadth of what people could do to make a menorah. Then it says zahav tahar, which says, wait, slow down. Don't make it out of anything, make it out of gold. And then it says taset menorah, which is again, we're going to darshan all this in a second, a very general thing. If everyone remembers, there are ways that we darshan the Torah. One very fundamental way is called klal upradu klal, right? Where you have a rule in the beginning, klal, everything, not a rule, but a general statement, a prat, which says just this, and then a second klal. And we have a big machloket. Do you go after the first klal, the second klal? Do you include many things, some things? So says Rav Papa, that's what's going on here. Let's read that all inside. Amar le, bein mar ubein mar klali uprati darshi. Both the Tanaim who argue about other metal, darshan, klal, and prat, mihu. The question here is mar savar, that how do you remember what a klal prat is? Instead of saying everything is included, you limit everything by some of the detail of the prat. So it has to be similar to the prat, not just the prat, but similar to the prat, right? Here the prat is gold. So when you say similar to gold, what do you mean? Right? So one Tana says, Mar Savar Maha Prat Mufurash Shel Matechet. Gold is metal. So Af Kol Shel Matechet. Any kind of metal is kosher for the menorah. Wood is not kosher, right? Glass is not kosher, but every metal is kosher. Umar Savar, but the other Tana, which is Rebbe, holds, Maha Prat Mufurash Davar Chashuv, right? There's metal and there's metal. Gold is something that, you go to the store and you buy gold, but silver is something very respected. But I don't know, tin, no one's going home and investing in tin or metal alloys. Afkol davar chashuv. So that was Rav Papa's explanation, beautiful explanation of the Machloket Tanaim, and he said this in front of Rav Yosef. And Rav Yosef said, I am not impressed. Amar Le, said Rav Yosef to him, we're the sixth to last narrow line, Sami didach, why don't you delete your Mishnah, your Braita? It's sorry, take it out of the context. Mikami didi. I got a better Braita. I feel like my Braita is more accurate and more justified, and yours is like just a mistake. So apologize, but your version looks incorrect. What is my Braita? Said Rav Yosef. The Tanya, as Rav Yosef said, I have another Braita, and the Braita says the following. And this Braita is a little more general. Kli sharet shasan shel eitz. If you make your kli sharet, say the shulchan, right? Well, the shulchan is made out of wood. Let's say a cup for collecting the blood in the Beit HaMikdash, and you make it out of wood. Rebbe Posel, Rebbe says no dice. You cannot use a wooden kli in the Beit HaMikdash. And Rebbe Yehuda machshir, okay? And Rebbe Yehuda says it's kosher. Now, b'maika miflagi, what are they arguing about? So again, this is specifically about wood. We're not up to the menorah yet. B'maika miflagi, the difference is Rebbe darshi klali uprati. Rebbe says that when you have a rule and a specification, you do what's called a klal uprat, which means that there's a general principle, and the principle is limited by that prat. But Rebbe Yehuda is much more expansive, and he is darshi ribuye umeute. Ribuye umeute is a way to look at the Torah of saying the Torah includes everything, that's ribuy, and it is mimayit, one specific thing. So unlike a klal prat where you have to have a rule that it's similar to the prat, but a ribuye miute, you basically have everything and you exclude one thing. So it's a much less specific exclusion. And that's how Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda darshan. So we're going to read the psukim now in great detail.
Between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva.
Correct.
You have over and over in Shas.
That is correct. So this is much earlier, as you said, machloket of the klalim. I mean, 3 generations or 4 generations earlier, 3 generations earlier, that they argued. What's the machlok? Let's read the psukim now in these different frameworks. Okay, so Rebbe darshi klali uprati. Rebbe, third to last of the narrow lines, he holds the principle of klal uprat. Again, klal uprat is short term for klal uprat or klal, just to be clear, right? That use principles and limitations. Asita menorah, it says make a menorah, that is klal. You can make a menorah out of anything. Then it says zahav tahar, that's a prat. You can only make it out of gold. Then it says mikshet te'aseh menorah. Just beat out the menorah, implying you could beat it out of anything. Chazar v'kalal, that's a new klal. So we have a principle of klal prat klal, iyatadan elokeina prat. You have to then say that the Torah is saying many things, but they have to be similar to the detail that you gave. And what's the detail? This is all in the Braita here. Maha prat mufrash shel matechet. This is Yosef's point. The prat is not gold; it's metal, right? Sorry, it's not davar chashuv. It's metal. Afkol shel matechet. It has to be made out of metal. Now, you can't make it out of wood, but you can make a menorah, according to this Braita, out of any kind of metal, including cheap metals, right? That's the beginning of the Braita. Let's continue the Braita. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, who says that in fact you can make kalim in the Beit HaMikdash even out of wood, darshi ribuye miute. He learns the principle of riboy and miyut, and then he reads the psukim the following way: Vasita menorah, make a menorah riba. You can make a menorah out of anything, right? Then it says zahav tahar, that's a miyut. You can only make it out of gold. Then it says mikshet te'aseh menorah, make it beaten out, chazav riba. So you have a principle of riba, umiyat, uriba, riba hakol. Unlike a klal prat klal, where you have similar things to the prat, here in a riba, miyat, uriba, you include everything. But there's a miyat, so you exclude one specific thing, right? Umay Rabbi kol mili. You include every type of material to make your kelim and your menorah. My mi'et, what do you exclude? Because the Torah clearly says a gold, right? And it doesn't mean just gold, but it means something like gold. You exclude the lowest of all kelim. What's the lowest of all kelim? My mi'et shel cheres. You exclude earthenware. Why is earthenware the lowest of all kalim? So one explanation is, besides that it's made out of dirt, right, which is pretty low, is that remember when you burn oil and you light earthenware, it gets ruined, right? It gets smelly and gritty, and you basically have to throw it away, and it smells really bad. And so it's really not very usable, unlike all kinds of other materials. So, anyways, that's all you would exclude. So it
It
says,
also can't become purified if it becomes
which is why we throw it away, right? You can never get it out. You never get the taste or smell out of earthenware, right? It's considered to just get absorbed, basically. So that's what Rav Yosef said. Rav Yosef said, I don't know, you came along, Rav Papa, and quoted a Braita which said that according to Rebbe, you can make a menorah out of silver and gold and no other metal. And according to Rav Yosef, Rebbe Yehuda, you can make it out of any kind of metal. Your Braita is wrong. My Braita says very clearly that according to Rebbe, you can make a menorah out of all gold, out of all metal, sorry. And according to Rav Yosef, Yehuda, you can even make it out of wood. Said Rav Papa, well, nice to you, but I disagree. Adarabba, said Rav Papa, the fourth line from the top. Sami didach, mikami didi. Get rid of your Braita in front of mine. Why is yours better than mine, right? So we each have a version of a Braita. Why are you so confident that you learned in a better yeshiva than I did? Amr said Rav Yosef, I know why. Lo sal kedaitach. It's not likely that you're correct. Tanya, because there's another Braita. And this Braita says the following. Ein lo zahav. Let's say it's time to build a menorah and they don't have enough gold. It was a lot of gold. Charlie says 30 kilograms of gold. That's a lot of gold. Let's say nowadays the gold's, $1 million. I don't think they could do it nowadays, right? Charlie, you're muted, but
about $4 million at today's prices.
okay, so you can imagine for a cash-strapped government, it might be a big challenge. So ein lo zahav, maybe shel kesef, av shel kesef. You can make a menorah out of silver, or shel nechoshet, or copper, or shel barzel. What do you translate barzel? Iron, I think, something like that. Okay, the Iron Age, right? Or shel bedil, which we translated as tin before. Shel oferet, or made out of oferet, which I always thought we said lead, right? Also, but we had a different word for lead. Anyways. Hey, Miriam, you're also muted. Oh, ferrite means lead, right?
That's what it says here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay. No, because we used the word aver before for lead. I don't.
Right. Yeah. Oferet is also lead.
Okay, another lead. So that's the Braita, and this is the Tanakama, which is Rebbe. You can make it out of any type of metal. And Rebbe Yehuda machshir afshal eitz. Rebbe Yehuda says you can't even eight. So clearly from this Braita, you're wrong, Rav Papa. It's not true that Rebbe says only gold and silver. This Braita clearly says any kind of metal. Right? So that's partly why I think you should erase your Braita. And furthermore, there's another Braita. But Tanya, we have another Braita which says, Lo yaseh adam bayit tavnit heichal. You're not supposed to copy the Beit HaMikdash because the Beit HaMikdash is holy. You shouldn't make your house in the same format, the same design of the Heichal. You shouldn't make your Aksadra, your portico, Keneged Ulam, like the opening chamber of the Heichal. Chatzer keneged azara, you shouldn't make your courtyard like the azara. Shulchan keneged shulchan, your table shouldn't look like the table in the Beit HaMikdash, and you shouldn't make a menorah keneged menorah. You shouldn't have a candelabra, which of course, why in Hanukkah we don't do it, right? You shouldn't have a menorah that looks like that menorah. Aval osehu shel chamisha v'shel shisha v'shel shmona. You can make a candelabra, right? It just can't look like the menorah. So it can be 5, 6, 8. Shel sheva lo ya'aseh. You shouldn't make it out of 7 branches. Ve'afilu mishar minei matachot. Even if you're using metal that's not gold. So you see from here, according to the Tanakhama, which is Rebbe, all metals are kosher. And then continues the Braita, Rabbi Yosef Yudam, Afshal 8, Lo Yaseh. You shouldn't make even a menorah that's 7 branches out of wood, because according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, of course, remember, wood is kosher. Kederach she'asu beit malchei chashmonai, right? It's the way the Beit Chashmonai made a menorah out of wood. So you see that the Beit Chashmonai made a menorah out of wood, and therefore, I'm going to pause here for a second, even though we're in the middle of the Braita, you can see that the machloket is metal or wood, not like you said, silver or other metals. Says Rabbi Yossi, says the Chachamim to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, you went to the wrong museum, right? When you went to the Israel Museum and they told you that the Beit Hashmonai was made out of wood, that was a mistake. Don't believe everything you see. Amar lo, they said to him, Misham Raya, you're proving that the Beit Hashmonai made out of wood. They didn't make it out of wood. They just made it out of shpudim shel barzel hayu, right? They made it out of, again, we don't exactly know why the Hashmonaim, but presumably somewhere in the ruining of the Beit HaMikdash, they went away with the menorah. So when the Chashmonaim came, maybe if it's referring to Hanukkah here, but sometime after that, they came back to light the menorah. They found the olive oil, but they didn't find the menorah, right? So they had to improvise really quickly and make a menorah. But they didn't make it out of wood. They made shpudim shel barzel. They took not little, they took holes, pillars of barzel, iron, right?
Iron.
Thank you. V'chifam beba'atz. They didn't want to put iron out. It didn't look pretty. They covered them with this thing called ba'atz, right?
Tin.
Tin, thank you. Thank you very much. And the point is that that looked like wood, because I guess when tin gets, I don't know, rubbed away a little bit, it looks like wood. Again, I don't exactly know that, but that's why there was a mistake. People thought that the Chashmonaim made a menorah out of wood. It wasn't really wood. It just looked like wood because that's what the tinge of the tin was. But anyways, they never made it out of non-metal, according to the Chacham Rebbe. Heshiru, now when they got richer, right, when the war was over and the economy improved, Asum Shel Kesef, they made a new one out of silver. Chazar Vashir, when they got really rich, Asum Shel Zav, when they got the $5 million, they made it out of gold, right? So anyways, that is why Rav Papa is wrong and Rav Yosef is correct, and erase your Braita in front of mine. So that is the end of that discussion of how you make a menorah. According to Rebbe, it's any kind of metal, but not non-metal items. And according to Rav Yosef Yehuda, it's even wood and even bone and even glass, which would be very beautiful, but not kli cheres. You can't make it out of kli cheres. Everyone agrees. Okay, now one more sugya we're going to do today, which is as super complicated, but we'll go through it like we do in the Daf Yomi quickly. That's how you deal with complexity here. Is that when the Torah describes how to make the menorah, if you recall, there are many, many details. Right? And it says, Kaftareo, Prochem, Imenu Yu, Uba menorah. I'm going to read some of the psukim. Arba gviyim meshukadim, 4 gviyim, 4 cups, Kaftareo, Prochem. We have no idea what any of this is referring to. And we're going to learn the Gemara, and I'm not sure we're going to have a great idea after learning the Gemara. But, as you know, there are many different pictures. I don't have any pictures. I apologize. I'm going to share a picture. No, I'm not allowed to share. I found the picture online, but anyways, you'll find your pictures of these different menorahs of what they look like. Okay, I can put it in the chat. Sorry. Well, it's like
And just copy and sit.
I don't know how to do this. Okay, hopefully this will show up, but I'm sure many people have in their Gemara different pictures. Chat. Thank you, Nama. This is one that I found when I Googled. Here's another one. Anyways, I can't vouch for any of these websites. But anyways, it was very complicated. Okay, so let's read the Gemara and try to figure out how. I don't know if you can open up because it's on Instagram, but if you can see what it looks like. Anyways, there's many, many pictures. If you open a Chumash, you open a lot of Gemaras, there's pictures. The second one I posted is the picture that's in the Ktav Yad, in the handwriting of, they say the Rambam. I don't know if the Rambam really wrote it, but it's written in the Pirush HaMishnah of the Rambam. As you can see, it's not exactly, they didn't have small pens back then, so it's not exactly to scale, I don't think. But either way, people claim that that's the Rambam's own writing, right, of what it looks like. What?
Cool.
It is pretty cool if it's accurate. Anyway, says Shmuel, Mishmei de Saba. Shmuel said in the name of Saba. Of course, Tosas doesn't bring it here, but elsewhere Tosas quotes that whenever we say Saba in the Gemara, it's referring to
And older.
Eliyahu Hanavi.
Oh.
That the Saba is like a code word for the Saba. Anyway, so which would make sense because Shmuel is going to describe a menorah, which of course he never saw, right? So anyways, this is the way the menorah looked like. It was Govashal menorah Shmona Asar Tfachim. The menorah was 18 tfachim tall, and 18 tfachim is around 4 to 5 feet. Okay, so the height of a human. And the raglayim, the feet of the menorah, and the perach, and the flower at the base, which the Torah says you have to have, shloshat tfachim. That was 3 tfachim. So you're going to keep count now, right? 3 tfachim tall. Then there was 2 tfachim of one pole that was chalak, that had nothing on it. Okay, so remember, a tefach is, what do we say, like 4 inches, right? 3 to 4 inches. So another 6 to 8 inches of just a pole. Okay, we're up to 5. Got it? V'tefach, then there was the 6th tefach, which had a gvia, a kaftar, and a perach. It had all 3 decorations: a cup, a ball, and a flower. Now, how do you do 3 in 1? So some say that they were overlapping, right? That you had basically a cup, and inside the cup you had a ball, and inside the ball you had a flower. Rashi here implies that you actually had all three on different sides, meaning you had the silver and the gold in the middle, and on one side you saw a cup, one side you saw a flower, and one side you saw a kaftar, a ball. Okay, which is pretty cool and not so hard to do if you have a big menorah, of course, right? Tosfos doesn't like that. Anyways, there's a lot of uncertainty about exactly what this looked like. But now that's the sixth tefach. Okay, then where am I?
The eighth.
I'm up to the eighth.
Oh.
Sorry, I lost my place. Tefach shabo gvia kaftar perch. Then there's two more tefachayim, which gets you up to eight, which is chalak. Then the ninth tefach had a kaftar, had only a ball, but from that ball, shnei kanim yotzim mimenu. There were two branches that came out of the menorah, right? Which, of course, you're going to need six branches eventually, but we're starting with two. Echad elech, one to one side, ve'echad elech, and one to the other side. Nimshachin v'olin keneged govha shel menorah, and they went up to the top of the menorah. Of course, I will pause here to say what the Rambam seems to indicate, which is that nothing about the Gemara has any implication that these were curved, right? Every menorah you've probably seen, almost, has curved branches. They come out and they go up, right? There's nothing about this Gemara that implies that these branches were curved. And the Rambam's drawing, as you know, has branches going straight out. Okay? The problem, of course, if they go straight out is that the tops are not flat, right? So you have to deal with that. But anyways, nothing about the Gemara implies that they were curved, and we don't really know, I would say. Anyways, we're up to number, what are we up to? 10, right? Or 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
10.
10. Tefach chalak. Then the 10th tefach was plain. And then the next tefach, 12, I guess.
11.
11, kaftar, you had another ball, ushnei kanim yotzim mimenu, and two additional branches, we're now up to four branches, came out of it, echad elech ve'echad elech, one on each side, nimshachim v'olin keneged govha shel menorah, and they went to the top of the menorah. Now we're up to 13, right? 12, tefach chalak. The 12th is now, again, plain, and the 13th is where you get the last two branches. Tefach, the 13th one, had a kaftar, another ball, and shnei kanim yotzim mimenu, and two branches coming out of it. Echad elech ve'echad elech, one this way and one that way. V'nimshachim v'olim keneged govha shel menorah, and they went up to the top. And then you had tfachayim, which is number 14 and 15, two extra tfachim that are chalak, that are plain. And then you're left with three tfachim. Nishtaru sham shlosha tfachim, you have three at the top, three tfachim. Shebahem, in those tfachim, you have shlosha giviim, three cups, right? And kaftar vaferach, right? And one ball and one flower, okay? And that's on each branch across seven, okay? So that's the beautiful design of the menorah. Says the Gemara now, 6 lines on the bottom, 7 lines on the bottom. What are gviim? What do you? I translate as cups. Gviim lamayim domin. They are kimin kosot Alexandrium. They're like these Alexandrian cups. I have no idea what Alexandrian cups are, but beautiful cups from Alexandria that are shaped and formed in a great shape, let's say. Very, very nicely. What are kaftorim, lamayim domim? What are these balls? Kimin tapuchei akartim, like the apples of the Cretes. Again, I have no idea what the apples of the Cretes are, but some kind of special apple or ball that they made in Crete, right? Rashi says is a place. I think we're familiar with the place.
So our scroll has actually very good descriptions of what each of them are. I'll take a picture and send it later.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, because I mean, they explained what Rashi meant specifically about each shape.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, if you could send it, that'll be wonderful. Prachim l'mayim domim. What are flowers? Now, meaning we know what flowers are, but what do they mean in the menorah? They are kimin pirchei ha'amudim. It's like the flowers of the pillars, right? If you ever go to Greece, I guess, right? On top of the pillars, they have those filial things that come out the top. I'm sure everyone knows the terms for them, right? You know that? Sure. But those are the flowers that we're referring to. Nimtzu, it turns out, let's do a few more lines because we're in the middle of the sugya, that if you add it all up, Gviyim Esrim Mishnayim, you have 22 cups altogether. We'll see in a second how you count them up. Kaftarim Echad Asar, you have 11 balls. And Prachim Tisha, you have 9 flowers in the menorah. And this is why, of course, we're quoting this whole Gemara, because it connects to our Mishnah. Gviyim Ma'akvin Zed Zeh. You got to have every single one of those gviyim, all 21. Kaftarim makvim zed zeh, prachim makvim zed zeh. And Kviyim, kaftirim, and prachim, makvin zetza. The whole sets are makiv each other. Okay? Do you guys want to do 4 more minutes? Is it worth it? Okay, let's do it. Bishlama gviim esrim mishnayim. Now I understand you get to 22 gviim if you're paying attention. Dichtiv, because the Torah says ubemenorah arba'a gviim. The menorah itself, the central part of the menorah, had 4 gviim, 4 cups, and chdiv shlosha gviim meshukadim b'kanei achad kaftar v'terach. Each specific stem had 3 gviim, right? So 3 times 6, right, is 18. Plus 3 in the middle, right? 4 in the middle?
That's 21.
Plus 4 in the middle is 22. So arba dida, 4 in the middle, tam nisrei, top of daf chaftet amud aleph, 18 dekanim of the 6 times 3 branches. Got it. But ha'isru mitartin, so that's 22. And kaftarin nami, I get how you got 11 balls, echadasar, kaftareim, because trei dida, you have 2 at the main stem, shisha dekanim, right? You get 8, right? Where am I? No, echadasar. Kaftareim, trei dida, shisha dekanim, right? You have 6 of the different stems, because each stem has 1 kaftar. Each
The
stem
knob.
right? Sorry?
The knob.
Knob, thank you. Each stem of the menorah has at the top of it 1 knob, right? And kaftar, kaftar, v'kaftar. Remember, there was 3 points in the middle of the main branch where you broke out to the 2 sides. And each time you broke out to 2 sides, you had a kaftar where you broke out. So that was 3 times. So you have 11 altogether. Achad srei. Ela prachim tisham menolim. Where do you get 9 flowers from, right? Because prachim trei dida, you have 2 on the main stem, and you have 1 on each side stem. That's only 8, right? V'shisha dekanim tamnayav. It's only 8. So you're 1 short on your flowers. Amarav Shalman, Amarav, right? Salman, sorry, Rav Salman said, it says ad yirecha, ad pircha mikshehi. You go to the stem, you go to the perach, and you bound it out, and pound it out, and that tells you that there's 1 extra perach, 1 extra flower that's put on the menorah. So that's where you get the 9th flower. So again, Miriam will send the pictures, but basically
Yeah.
it was 18 tvachim tall. We're going to see tomorrow there's another opinion. That's not the only opinion, but one opinion that we just quote is 18 tvachim, but it has to have 22 cups and 11 balls and 9 flowers. Okay? Keep getting the number wrong. Yeah, 11 and 9. Yasher koach, everyone. Have a great week. Hope you get beautiful pictures of the menorah, and we will see you all soon.
Shavua tov.
So.
Thank you.
Good.